Zach, on This Week of Buffering, we have to talk about your interior decorating design choices and everything that you've added to the background of your new home office, because I'm loving the choices here, my man.
Well, Gabe, I'm glad you're loving it because I just basically emptied a box that still had some stuff in it and thought this will look good. But hey, I've got my diploma, so I graduated. I've got the Lego Otter next to it. I've got the rotating picture frame and some appliances below that as well. So it's coming together. All I need is some fake plants, if I dare say the word fake in that sentence. But Gabe, no, it's nice to have some office space.
Just like me, dude.
Is that fake or is that real? I've been meaning to ask you.
That's 100% a fake plant.
You're not like spraying it with water?
No, I'm not. It was sitting out in front of my neighbor's house a couple of months ago, and he had two of them. And I was like, not James, my neighbor that I talk about all the time, but another neighbor. And I was like, those actually look pretty good. I should throw them in the corner here just to see if they, to see if I like them. And I like them. It adds a little bit of depth to the frame. So I'm keeping them. They are fake. I'm not usually a huge fan of the fake plants, but I also don't really want to try and keep something alive. So, I'd recommend the fake plants.
Same. I will say I need some backlighting, so more to come with this space. I did have the thought a couple days ago. I was like, I should turn this into a movie/gaming studio. And then I'm like, I'd never use that. I have that upstairs. But Gabe, you know what I really need? I need a giant buffering neon sign. I think that would tie the room together. But it has to be the one where it's very brightly glowing in my face and you can't see. Like The Office when he puts the neon beer sign in his kitchen. That's the kind of buffering sign I need.
I agree. That would look great. I do have to say, I love that you put the Lego Otter that you built in the background there. That's a nice touch.
Yeah. If only it had a little bit more light and you could see what it was. But what I don't have back there, Gabe, is any AI compute resources, which is really, what we're talking about today. Not so much on the compute, but more on the AI side.
Yeah, exactly. I'm excited to get into this conversation, Zach. And, as we were preparing for this episode, we had this topic or this conversation, and I loved this question so much that I just want to talk about it straight off the top. And I'm going to call it gut check question for BSP leaders. If you gave your most junior employee an AI tool and your most senior employee no AI tool and gave them the same problem, who do you think would win in a real task by Friday? And if that outcome is even close, I think that tells you everything you need to know about where we're at with AI right now.
If I was to bet on this scenario, I would say, the most junior employee with AI would be quite dangerous.
Dangerous is a good word. There may be some terrifying things that come out of this project, but yes, I think they would be very dangerous. By the way,
that wasn't a don't do it. I mean, let's be honest here, Gabe. We've talked a lot about AI in the past here. We've seen what it can do. Not only what it can build from scratch, but how it can, I don't want to say make our lives easier, but provide additional value into the work we do already do.
100%. And this is more of the conversation that we want to get into today. And we've certainly talked about this in the past when we've done building with AI episodes. And we want to touch on that a little bit today, but I think there's even greater opportunity to think about building is a very generic term. And when we've talked about building in the past, Zach, I think we've discussed building new things or building new processes, building new agents or new workflows. And those things are important as well. But there's a really good opportunity to reframe around, I guess, modifying maybe existing processes or even pointing AI at things like your website, which we can talk about a little bit later, or, other tools and processes that exist in your business to improve them and frankly make significant improvements with relatively little effort.
And I think that's, the term I like to use is inserting AI into your existing processes. It's a great place to start. And then from there, you can go become more dangerous, as I mentioned, and, totally break things up. But I think, you and I over the past 12 months, 24 months, 36 months, however many months it's been with AI, we've gradually seen this progression of, 3 years ago, hey, I'm using AI tool in this new, maybe limited capacity. And then, we've slowly grown to this point where we are doing a lot with AI. We're building, we're strategizing, we're doing all this work. And one of the analogies I've heard was thinking of AI as the Olympics, right? Like as much as we'd like to get that gold medal today and be up on the podium with the latest and greatest AI solution, is you've got to start somewhere within your AI journey, whether that's maybe not building right off day one or breaking up your processes on day one. But again, starting somewhere with AI and then graduating and evolving into that process. And I think, again, going back to that quote here, if you gave your most junior AI or your most junior employee AI and your most senior employee no AI, what is the outcome of that test? And Gabe, I think that's a very good way to look at this as well.
I think that would be such a fascinating project to run just as an experiment and see what actually comes out there. Because I think people would be really surprised by the results. And it gets to an idea as well around this idea of an AI middle class, quote unquote. And I know there's been a ton of discussion about entry level jobs disappearing and all of the challenges that have happened from a job perspective as it relates to AI. And Zach, you and I have talked about that a number of times in the past as well. But the part the part that actually I think is scariest is people who are in the middle of their careers, who are middle managers or, those types of roles. I think those are the folks who are really most vulnerable in this time that we're living in because they're not AI native and they probably don't have the desire to go off and put in the time to learn these tools. You mentioned 12 months, 24 months. It does take some time. I was having this conversation with a friend just the other day, and I said it's been 6 months for me of real focused time and effort to get to what I would consider to be AI fluent at this point. And, it's something just like anything that you want to be good at. You have to kind of practice that every single day to continue to get better. And there's a lot of people in the middle of their career and in the middle of organizations that frankly don't want to put in that time and effort.
And I think the other side of that too, Gabe, is the upcoming generations, Gen Z and the next gen, which I always forget, Alpha. But this is the group of people that have the least amount of tenure in your organization, but yet they have the most fluency as well. So there's an inversion here that no one's really built for on your organization chart here. To your point.
hmm And we'll talk about some ideas of how we potentially see, bringing those two groups together in a helpful way, a little bit later in the pod. But let's get into more of this AI building versus AI revisiting things that you've already built. I really want to get into this discussion,
I
Zach.
I just love building stuff with AI. And Gabe, I don't know if
I mean,
I
who
told you
doesn't?
about I don't know if I told you about this, but I've had like 3 conversations, outside of my day job this week of, "Could we build a website? Yes, we could do it. How long will it take you? Give me 20 minutes," right? And I say give me 20 minutes, but Gabe, we're at a point now, I think you and I, where over the past several years, we've experimented with prompts. We know what works. We know what doesn't work. We know how to kind of guide AI, better than just saying, build me a website, right? So, it might be a 1 minute prompt and then AI goes off and runs for 15 minutes, as I've mentioned to you this week. But you get this really nice end result here. So I think, we've always talked about using AI is now table stakes and not a differentiator here, and how the knowing prompts was the 2024, 2025 skill now. But again, that's quite commoditized too, where anyone can ask a chatbot a question at this point. But again, it goes back into, well, what are you asking? What's the value of the question you're asking? How is your prompt? So there's still a component of that, but we've gone so far beyond that is, would you call it AI 101 or AI 900 even?
It's very, very basic, and yeah,
It's
the
expected at a
commoditization.
minimum.
For sure. The commoditization word is interesting too, because Zach, I texted you last night. There's some, I don't know that I can get into this and actually like speak about it intelligently. So you're going to have to keep me on the rails here. But there's some new models that have come out literally just, I think yesterday, out of, was it out of China? Were they out of China? I believe they are out of
I believe
China.
so, yeah.
That basically are showing much better results than, even things like Fable and, some of the latest OpenAI models as well. And the cost of those is dramatically cheaper than the models that are currently being used. So we've been talking, I think people have been talking about the commoditization of LLMs for a while. It feels like we may be at this point, and you even see it in things like with OpenAI, OpenAI launching a new model, and Anthropic having to extend Fable. Oh, just kidding, we're going to give access to it for another week, and oh, we're going to increase your usage limits for another couple of weeks. These companies are having to get very aggressive from a pricing and a product perspective to keep people in the fold. So, not only is there commoditization around how AI is being used, and to your point, prompting is a commodity at this point. The LLMs that people are actually using are also getting commoditized so that they're continually cheaper and cheaper, and it lowers the barrier of what it actually costs to do things with AI.
I'm all about that, Gabe. Because you know me and my usage limits here. By the way, Fable, I ran that through one of my apps a couple weeks ago just to look at any security issues or anything I may have missed. Luckily, there was just a couple very minor things we patched up. But talk about burning up your usage. I think it ran for 10 minutes and there was my weekly usage, which I'm on a Cloud Max plan, Gabe. Like that's never
Yeah.
happened before, but. I was very impressed. So super
I don't
impressive
think I
model
told you
there.
this, dude. I saw a hilarious Reddit post of somebody who said, I kicked off a Fable 5 prompt. I went to go pee and I came back and it completely destroyed my usage for the entire week. Which just made me laugh. I
I
guess it spawned like dozens and dozens of agents that were running in the background at the same
oh
time and
yeah.
just completely murdered this guy's usage for an entire week.
It reminds me of like the old joke with like when Opus came out when everyone was like, "Oh, I'm gonna
Mm.
use Opus to like center the text box on my website," or like the meme of the guy trying to light a cigar, like that giant cigar with like a blowtorch, if you remember that. But
I do. Yeah, using
the
Fable 5 to check my email or whatever.
Yeah, and so, like, I largely tell people, like, there's no wrong model to use today. I have my preferences, Gabe have his preferences, and I think we're on the same page there. Some models are better at, things than others, and again, as we looked at that chart, I wish I had that with us, Gabe, but as you looked at the chart and, what these models are excelling at today, it's just such a commoditized space. But that aside, one last thing on that. I do have to laugh because when you text that to me last night, you sent me a Twitter link and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I just saw this on Reddit." The exact same chart like 10 seconds ago. So we have our own platforms there too, Gabe.
Indeed. Yes, exactly. We're sending
But
each other stuff back and forth. It was like 10 o'clock at night and I was still up and I went, I don't know what's happening anymore. The world is just getting crazy in what we're living through, but it's definitely a harbinger of things to come. And it's a reminder that these things are going to get much less expensive and the cost barrier to entry will be lowered. And so if you're not building these skills now, yeah, I can't imagine how behind I would feel if I wasn't doing anything with AI, and feeling like
oh,
I was woefully behind.
you'd be so far like I think of myself, Gabe, if I didn't touch AI for the last couple of years, I can't even imagine how far behind I would be in what we've done. I mean, I think of the example I shared with you yesterday, Gabe, was adding a new feature to one of my apps, a new SDK. It took me 2 minutes of prompting and explaining how I want this to be implemented, how I want it to work. AI ran out for probably 10, 15 minutes and built it out. And then from there, I was able to test, validate, review what it had done. This would have taken days, if not weeks, previously. And it took, again, 20 minutes probably total to have this implemented in my app. And I think that's one of my favorite things is if you think about from a development perspective or, to the marketers on the call, we talked about websites in the past. I had a customer conversation yesterday about email personalization at scale. If I'm going to ask you to create 3 segments, each month and do 3 different email campaigns based on those segments each month, what's the easiest way to do that? leverage AI, understand your brand, understand your email communications, build out those templates or build out those workflows that you can repeat each month. This is stuff that you can
Mhm.
do today. So I think of our BSB employees, you're probably not a developer. You're probably chaining tools together, outside all these different systems. Um, and you have the ability to insert AI into that process. And there's an agentic component to this too, Gabe, of just doing this for me. And that's one of the things I did yesterday too with Claude was not only did I have it implement the SDK into my app, but then I went and I said, okay, configure it on their, web dashboard, go in and do this. And it did all of that for me. This is stuff that, yes, I could do manually and spend hours of my day doing. Not having the time to do that, I passed it off to my intern Claude, and as of today, it's pending in the App Store. So I mean, I'm a huge proponent of building with AI and streamlining some of your internal processes here as well. But I think Gabe, I think you've seen this as well.
Yeah, 100%. And to extend this building with AI conversation for just a moment, it's not just building new things. What you described there, Zach, was you have built an app and you are using AI to make modifications to that. So to me, it's building and then also modifying. And a website, I think, is a really good example for this. I was doing some research for a customer meeting I've gotten coming up in a couple of weeks, and I went through and did a lot of deep research on their website, or AI did it for me to be fully transparent. But I wanted to make sure that I really deeply understood the buy flow. What are the terms and words that they're using? Also looking for any things like spelling errors or little snippets of code that may be actually visible on the website. That I found that. But what if if I have this giant website and I don't want to have to go through and read every single line, well, that's a great opportunity to let AI do some of the modification for you, point it at the website and say, go find me any of these issues. And this, it found issues on this website. Again, there was misspellings, there was actual code that was visible on the like public facing page, not embedded in the background. It was some things that frankly should have been caught. But somebody having to give that to somebody would have been an hours long project, maybe days long project, whereas AI did it in 15 minutes. So again, not just building, how do we use it to modify and ensure that the things that already exist inside of our organizations are actually good and providing the utility to our customers that we want them to provide.
And by the way, Gabe, on the website note, I mean, I told you about hey, AI, go out and optimize this website for SEO and GEO, which is kind of ironic. Hey, AI, go out and optimize this site for
It's very
AI.
meta, isn't it?
Yeah, but it does. It goes out and creates those LLM files. It goes out and optimizes what's on your website. I mean, Gabe, I don't know if I told you about this either. Man, I feel like I'm just not keeping Gabe up to speed on what
I
I'm
know,
doing
what the
these
heck,
days.
man.
Yeah, man,
Come
what
on.
the heck? But one of the things it did is says, hey, you don't have an FAQ section on your website. That's great
Mm,
for SEO. And I'm like, why didn't I think of that? But it's getting these gaps, right? Like I would call that a gap of, yes, I know it's a best practice. No, I didn't implement it. AI recognized this and said, let's do it. Building out the site maps, working with Google Search Console. I mean, there's all these things that you
yes.
can use AI to do. And Gabe, if I'm being honest with you, I'm not seeing enough people do it.
I am 100% not seeing enough people do it. In fact, I've been doing a lot of these AI search visibility reports for providers. And one of the things that I'm seeing consistently come up in these analysis is there's no robots text file, there's no LLMS text file, there's no JSON LD content that's embedded in the websites behind the scenes that, to your point, are very helpful from both an SEO and a GEO
And
perspective.
can I just ask one thing there, Gabe? Is my question is always like, why don't you have this? And if it's, oh, we don't know how, well, here you go, kind of thing. Um,
Correct.
do it for me,
Or
show me
yeah,
how to do it. Like this all exists, right? But we're at a point now,
100%.
Gabe, where I think you and I get frustrated on, on a daily basis because they're all, there are these best practices out there where it's like, if you want to compete, be successful, be best in class in 2026, these are the things you need to be doing. So I think we collectively in the industry need to move faster on things just like this. SEO, GEO being a critical example. There's so much more, but on the topic of websites, that's the first one that comes to mind here. There's no
100% the
no
first
more
one that comes to
excuses.
mind. Yes, agreed. It is 100% the first one that comes to mind for me because it's a virtuous cycle of, once you get these things in place, then to your point, you're driving more traffic through these AI search engines, whether that be, ChatGPT directly or Google AI mode or whatever. But yes, it's never been easier to create those resources. AI can read through all of the content that's on your website and create those files for you and even deploy them for you. I've done the exact same thing that you're talking about, Zach, or FAQ is another really good example. I was working on standing up the website associated with the coffee app, and that's exactly that. The FAQs was another one that I hadn't thought about either, but each one of the guide pages that I've created has a bunch of data points. Well, those are perfect to throw into an FAQ section at the bottom of the page that are helpful not only for a human reader who wants to understand some of those data points in this case, or frequently asked questions, or an AI search engine who's trying to determine, what is this page about and should I actually show it to somebody?
Just don't put in your FAQ section that fiber is the width of a human hair or, smaller than a human hair, I guess. But um Gabe, you sent
Great
me an
point.
Instagram reel yesterday, which I was surprised by. Number one, Gabe sent an Instagram. I didn't even know you had Instagram.
So I just signed up for Instagram again, specifically for the coffee thing, because I was thinking about, that it would be good to share some content there. And I still haven't jumped into the deep end of the pool and really done anything with it. But I did sign up for the account. To be fair, I did see that video initially on X. And then when I went to go search it out later, because I didn't save it or bookmark it, I found it as an Instagram reel. And that's why I sent it to you that way. But I did feel, I figured you were going to chuckle at that I did send you a reel from Instagram.
I was laughing, Gabe, because I mean, obviously, I thought, well, someone hacked Gabe's phone. This isn't Gabe, but
That was
tell us
probably the
about
logical explanation.
yeah, right. Tell us about this real Gabe.
Yeah, it was Mark Andreessen, who's a technologist, and you see him in all kinds of technology conversations. But he had an interesting point about Gen Z and about the different generations as it relates to AI. And there were a couple of things that really jumped out to me in the conversation that he was having. It was a clip from from a podcast that he was on. But what he was talking about was, the different. This is AI is not different from a technological revolution perspective. Like there's been other technological revolutions that have happened in our lifetimes, right? Internet is, I think, is a really good example of that. Or, smartphone is another really good example of that. There's a group of people, in this case, probably people 15 years of age and younger, that will never remember a world without AI. And then there's this group of people that are kind of in the middle that remember a world before it and maybe are a little bit nervous about it and don't understand how to totally use it. Zach, this is where I know I know you're not a teenager anymore, but it is really interesting. Like, I think you and I having these conversations together because I'm obviously much older and much further along in my
I mean,
career.
yeah,
So it's interesting. Yeah, I always enjoy you and I having these conversations because I feel like I'm able to bring in your enthusiasm for some of this new technology into the work that I'm doing on a day-to-day basis.
and Gabe, like transparently, like I spent a year and a half of my career without AI, right? So like I don't want to be like, oh, I know what it's like pre AI. Like I do have a little bit of experience, and I keep like one of the things I always think back to is if I had AI if I had AI back in the day, if I had the tools that we have today back in my prime, what would I have done differently, or how would I have done my job differently? And I just go back to like, oh, I would have built this, I would have built this, I would have done this. I have orchestrated these systems together. I think of like the MCP servers. I think back to banking and like how you can use all this data you have access to. And my goodness, would I have been the dangerous person, um, compared to that senior leader without AI?
Zach with AI and access to a bunch of banking information. That sounds absolutely terrifying. You
What
would
could
have been
go
dangerous.
wrong? But I mean, again, I'm thinking of the marketing and the building and, what you could do behind it. I am 100% confident I could build my own online banking app given, how I know the back end systems work. And at
For
that
sure.
point, it's not that I want to build an app, but I remember having to go back to our developer who was just a banking core company that, they do the whole thing and being like, hey, we want to see this feature. And them being like, well, if other people want to see it, we'll think about it and then we'll have to build it, blah, blah, blah. Gabe, I wanted a new feature in my app this week. I implemented it. immediately. It's in this testing phase now. It's not broken yet. It's working as expected. But being able to iterate in real time, I mean, I just go back to like, again, back in my prime there, being able to use these tools in my job. Now I'm very happy I have them today. I'm absolutely leveraging them today. Um, but again, going back to how we
Well,
started the podcast, I think it's incredible what
mhm.
your Gen Z or your Gen Alpha, people will do compared to your senior leaders who've been in those roles or those middle managers. If
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And to close off on that point, the middle managers and then the, folks who are, later in their career cycle as well, they the older group is often terrified of the technology and thinks that it's evil, right? And so this is where you hear a lot of the pushback around AI right now is people who, really don't want to don't want to take it on at all because they're not AI native like the group that we were talking about previously. The other point that I want to make here is the younger group has nothing to unlearn. They don't remember a world where they were having to do all of this rote work manually. Whereas even folks my age in my mid 40s, like there was being in my mid 40s, there was a time where I was manually entering things into a spreadsheet and, having to do all of this data entry work and analysis on a manual basis. And that was really, really inefficient. And I've had to unlearn those. I hate to even call them skills.
well, Gabe,
Maybe unlearn those habits, I guess maybe is the better way to say it, to think about how I do this in an AI native world now.
and a couple questions for you, Gabe. I know you're big into Excel and you've been using that, for a much longer time in your career than myself. But I mean, being honest, how what's Excel like these days for you with AI or some of these tools we've talked about? Are you still doing manual formulas, or has that component of your job totally changed as well?
I created a manual spreadsheet for the first time this week in probably 2 months.
That's
And the only
I
reason I did it was
oh, go
because there
ahead.
were like two spreadsheets that I wanted to put together. And it was like, you know what, this is just going to be easier for me to do just because I need to pull a couple of really quick things together. It was,
Yep.
maybe 10 minutes worth of work. That was the first time I'd done that in probably 2 or 3 months.
And so I'm similar page there. So this week I did a single X lookup because it was just a simple column I needed to bring in, and I didn't. It would be
Yep.
faster for me to do it in AI, but it was the first manual Excel formula that I have like built myself since April 2026. So it's now July, and I have created, I don't know, hundreds of Excel files in that time period. But the fact I can only name one instance where I've manually done, that work. And the reality too, Gabe, and you'll see this, I'm sure, but why would I spend hours on hours analyzing data when I can have AI produce the same result and then even take it deeper? So I think,
Hmm.
where I'm going with this here though, Gabe, is you don't need to just hire people for their AI skills. You don't need to just hire Gen Z for those AI skills. But when you combine that veteran knowledge, the two compound, right? I can now use the veteran knowledge I've gained along with these Excel analyses or these data analyses. And that's where I don't want to say again, getting dangerous here. How many times have I said that on this call? But that's where I think a lot of this
Uh,
value lies is, in this case, I'm not necessarily building something, right? But I'm using data to inform my decision making. I'm using data to inform my marketing campaigns. Oh, and by the way, what am I doing once I have that data informing my campaigns? Well, then I'm going out and I'm building the
mhm,
content. And that's another like last thing I want to touch on here is AI to building content. I think there is some hesitancy around like, oh, using templates, using Canva to do this, blah, blah, blah. No, that's good for images and whatnot. But again, when you're doing this at scale, when you need the creative on your website, the landing pages, the email content, that's a great use case for AI. Gabe, last week we did a podcast episode on Meta and doing ads, and we
mhm,
talked about how you can do multiple ads within a set or multiple campaigns within a set, so you can better target your audiences. These ads have to go somewhere, and you can either spend days creating these landing pages or weeks. I mean, I have some BSPs that I work with, Gabe, where it's like, well, we have to send this off to our IT team and they have to build it. And 2 months
yeah.
later, we have a landing page, and it's too late. You can't operate at that pace in 2026.
No, for sure. And I'll push back on one thing you said there around building, and I actually think there's an interesting way to frame this around building. We talked at the top of the episode about the idea of what can broadband service providers, or frankly, what can any company do to start to, tackle some of these skills and do these things? And, giving your most senior employee no AI in a project, giving your released, your one of your most junior employees all of the AI tools that they would need, and seeing who wins. There's an opportunity here to build a bridge between those folks as well, because the new person coming in doesn't have the context of and knowledge that that other person has after being in the industry for probably a very long time. And this is one thing that we hear very consistently in conversations with our customers is there is a real concern as a lot of people get towards retirement age that work in the broadband service provider space. How do they pass this knowledge on to the younger generation that's coming up? You have to pair those two people together, and you have to take that senior person that has all of that knowledge and context and insight and pair them with somebody who has the AI skills and the AI fluency and the AI native view of this, and put them together. Can you imagine how powerful putting two people like that together would be? I not to pat ourselves on the back, but I do look at us in a little bit of that way, because you have the AI skills and the desire and the enthusiasm for this. And I have a lot of knowledge and context just because I've been working for a lot longer. And I have no doubt in my mind that you have made me better at my job because of the work that we have done together.
Oh man, it's cloud
There is
code all
no
over
question.
again, Gabe.
Yeah, but I'm serious. Like there's no way that I would be doing all of the things that I'm doing right now if it wasn't for you pushing me a little bit and showing me how to get started. And that's the gap that I think really exists right now, is how do we take those younger people who are more enthusiastic about this and pair them up with people who have that knowledge and context to create these really powerful, duos or groups of people inside of organizations.
Which kind of brings us to the end of the podcast here, Gabe. And that's where, I think one of the messages here is um, learning Chat GPT is not enough. It's not a good skill. Now, to my point earlier, you don't just walk up and collect your gold medal. You do have to start somewhere, but learning Chat GPT is not enough. But I think, and Gabe, we talked about this in marketing. Well, what's your outcome? What do you want to do? And I think automating a workflow is a great outcome. How do I use AI to automate this workflow? You can go down a rabbit hole and really, learn a lot there. I was telling you the example yesterday of my dad was using ChatGPT because he was trying to track how different golfers were doing. And ChatGPT was like, well, if you use like Power Automate, we could pull this real time or blah, blah, blah.
Oh,
And doing
Power
like this
Automate.
whole
Don't even
thing.
get me started on that
And
crap.
and I was like, okay, well, you're probably with ChatGPT, but like, what if we think about this differently? Number one, what if we use Claude? Um, so I left that conversation with, here's a spreadsheet of like the golfers and the real time data that Claude is providing. And I woke up this morning to a website that he had built tracking this all in real time. So I don't know what happened overnight, other than someone
A
else
subscription to Pro, I can tell you that.
yeah, someone else buying Claude Pro. But again, it kind of shows you that progression there. And Gabe, I mean, I don't know. Like I said, learning ChatGPT is a great place to start, but it's not enough. Everyone is learning ChatGPT or has foundational knowledge of ChatGPT. You need to think more about the outcomes, the business impact, the workflows, how you can use this in your actual job.
Mm-hmm. And this also goes to management expectations and how those need to change. And managers they can no longer just check to see if the work gets done. They need to know what the process looks like and how it got done. And are people using just brute force to complete this, or are they leveraging AI to complete this? And going back again to the beginning of this conversation, if I'm a leader in a service provider, I'm trying to think about, okay, who are my senior employees? What are the problems that they're dealing with on an everyday basis? And what problems could AI potentially help solve? Let me pair them up with somebody who's a little bit more fluent, AI fluent or AI native, and help them solve through that problem, and then come back and do a readout of what that actually looks like. I mean, I think that would be such a fascinating way to start to tackle some of these things. And it doesn't need to be, don't tackle 100 projects. Go pick 2 or 3 that you think are going to be really impactful for the business, pair those people together, and see what happens when you don't have to use brute force anymore. You can actually leverage these tools to make your life easier.
I feel like, Gabe, one of the things we also do is here's the work that I've completed with AI, or here's the work that I've completed. Also this, there's always like oh, and I did this, or this was the next thing, or this was the unexpected, deliverable here. So there's a lot of that
It's a
as
really good
well.
point. Yeah, it's a really good point because you're right. It very rarely ends with, well, we did this one thing. It usually, is this kicked off a much larger conversation and a different way of approaching things. So I agree with you. It it's freeing your brain up for some of those other things, right? Or
Well,
or really using it as that brainstorming partner as
that's
well.
exactly it. What am I going to do now that I've saved hours on not having to do manual data analysis? Well, I'm going to take the next step, or I'm going to identify what those next steps would be. So I, again, like when I say like, oh, I used it to do this in Excel, it's not because it's replacing me, it's because it's enabling me to go the extra couple miles on that, right? And then also at scale too, the fact that I can have I don't know how many conversations in a given day at this point, or in a given week at this point, um, while not having to sift through Excel files in this case, or check
Hmm.
to see if your HTML file has Microsoft Clarity installed, or if you have an FAQ thing on your website. It's been a fantastic tool. But again, the big point here of the episode, if we go back to the beginning here, Gabe, is just that question I would encourage everyone to ask themselves: if you gave your most junior employee an AI tool and your most senior employee AI tool, who who wins on that real task by the end of the week?
Hmm. Yeah, I would definitely give people that encouragement to go, off and do that over the next couple of weeks and see what that looks like. I think the results are going to be very interesting and result in some really interesting conversations inside of organizations if people really went off and did that.
Absolutely. Well, Gabe, thank you for another fantastic episode, and thank you everyone for tuning in to Buffering. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to follow us on your favorite podcast app and to share it with your friends and colleagues. And for more insights and updates, be sure to connect with Gabe and I on LinkedIn.